I suppose the big problem that a Darwinist faces, as I said before, is to explain empathy, natural altruism, which seems to run counter to our Darwinian programming. And it really does seem as though we subjectively feel empathy in a way that a naive interpretation of Darwinism would think that we shouldn't. I mean, we're too nice for Darwinian tastes would be one way to put it. I think it will be a challenge, but it is a challenge to Darwinians to explain why we're so nice. Because starting out from the assumption that our ancestors would have been programmed, if you like, or not if you don't, to be nice towards relative and towards reciprocators, how come we're now nice to everybody? And I think that that's not that difficult to explain. Because what natural selection does is to put into brains rules of thumb. It doesn't say, look after the interests of your selfish genes in a cognitive way. If it did, then we'd all be a lot nastier than we are. What natural selection does is put into brains rules of thumb which might be of the form, be nice to any small squawking objects in your nest if you happen to be a bird. Now, in a human case, we used to live in small bands, small villages, where most of the people that you met, perhaps all the people that you ever met, would be relatives, and would be people you'd meet again and again, and therefore would be in a position to reciprocate. So the rule of thumb would have been, be nice to everyone you meet. Now that's translated into today, where we're cultural beings, where we live in large cities, we're no longer living in small villages or small bands. It's no longer true that everybody you meet is a relative or a potential reciprocator. But the rule of thumb doesn't know that. Why should it? Just as the rule of thumb, be lustful towards members of the opposite sex, works because in nature, back then, there was no contraception. Now there is contraception, and so the rule of thumb, just plain be lustful, doesn't work anymore, but it's still there. We still feel the lust. In the same way, we still feel the lust to be nice, because that's what natural selection built into us at a time when being nice meant being nice to everybody everybody you would ever meet. Nowadays we live in big cities, but the rule of thumb is still there. That's a very, very simplified account, but that's the kind of way in which a Darwinian might argue for why we're as nice as we are. We're certainly much too nice in a naive sense.